Hey everyone, Matt here from Herbal House, and in this video we are taking a closer look at the latest generation of Luma series by Four Seasons. So these LEDs over the years, in fact 4 years, have been around in NZ and have built a very solid reputation, and we're very proud to offer them here. But before we touch on the generational changes on this latest edition of Luma series, we're going to take a look at the range as a whole. So we have the smallest panel here, which is your Luma 400, mid-range is your Luma 800, and the largest would be your Luma 1200. So these all range in different powers and performance as people would expect for different scenarios. But what you do expect to see is of course nice plain brown packaging, because that's what they have absolutely mastered. Everyone likes to receive a nice plain brown box. They don't want labels all over it, letting everyone know what they've received in the mail. So they've really done a great job of keeping it nice and discreet, just the way everyone likes it. But not just the box itself, let's cover what's actually included inside. Starting with these 4 ratchet hangers here, pretty much what it means when you've got 4 ratchet hangers is it makes setup an absolute breeze. You're going to hook these onto each corner and it allows easy adjustability, lifting and lowering the LED. So for a lot of people that is very ideal, and it does make things a dream. The power cable itself has been improved. It is really long now. I believe it's 2 meters long, and we do have a waterproof plug connection on there. We also have a booklet for helping you get up and running and understanding a little bit more about your LED. The strengths of the Luma are unique to its design. As you can see, we've got these large glass dome optics or lenses. They're simply sitting on top of the cob to refract the light into a more accurate position. What that means is there's going to be less wasted light spread, focusing off to the outer regions and forcing it more in a downward position. What we find is this allows for a lot more punch through the canopy and increasing that intensity at canopy height. So for a lot of people, if they aren't using grow tents, this will help maximize that efficiency. For those who aren't familiar with the terminology, cobs or chip on board are a form of LED, being a large looking surface with multiple diodes stitched in across it. The result is a lot of intensity out of a relatively small surface. The spectrum emitted from these chips is a 3500K color temperature. This is right where you want to be for an LED that can do it all from veg to flowering. The chip itself is an XP35 cob developed by Four Seasons specifically for this application. Now these glass lenses or optics can actually be removed if you need to clean out any dust, debris or bugs that manage to get in there. Removing these lenses does have an added benefit of actually broadening the light spectrum. Like I said, they're going to reflect that light and focus it down, but for a lot of people that might not be necessary in spaces where the plants have grown really tall or the LED must be positioned in really close proximity to the plants. Now just moving on to the back side, or well, what we'd refer to as the top side of the LED here, you can see we've got these large discs. They're not in fact discs, these are actually heat sinks with fins that we can see here. So what that means for you is this is passively cooled. Now that also means no fans, no whirring, no noises when these are operating. They are completely silent. We do have a few extra holes here just for the heat to dissipate from the drivers that are mounted underneath, but the majority of the heat is going to be coming from these heat sinks. And while I say heat, it is very minimal. When you compare that against traditional bulbs, it is significantly less. Now, besides the heatsink, you can actually see this is a beautiful white color. Now that's actually a white powder coat. So that's taking elements from when these were commercially developed. So it means it's very hard wearing and a very hard surface to damage. And at least when it comes to hard running conditions or harsh running conditions of high humidity and things like that, this holds up incredibly well. So that's pretty much the back side here. Oh, sorry, I did forget to mention these are your mounting points, which are just on the back side of the panel here. This is where you're going to be hooking in those ratchet hangers and lifting the panel up. So of course, all 3 of these panels here have them in the corners. Again, a very easy way to set up these panels and adjust them if you needed different angles. So now that we've covered that, let's move on to the dimmer modules. So this is where 2 of the key changes are on these panels, at least over the older generation. And that's these 2 little ports here, input and output. Now what those are, they are ports to control the panel via a master controller. Now this is not required for anyone on a domestic level, of course, they are optional. So that means that with a Four Seasons master controller, you can daisy chain multiple of these panels together and control the time cycle of the panels. You can adjust the brightness remotely. It negates the need for the dimmer. So the dimmer itself has changed as well. These are now stepped in 10% increments, so you can adjust much more accurately than we have pretty much have ever had before, where they were completely linear. So for a lot of people, that's a welcome change. So you can just dial it to the exact intensity you require. And of course, just next to that, let me pull this across, we have the power input cable there. So just so you're aware, that's where you're going to be screwing in your power cable, so everything you need to access is on the front side of this panel. Now just one more thing I'd like to show you, which not everyone's going to see or even notice, to be honest, is just under the lens here. I'll just put that to the side. Now this is an original what we'd call a cob cover or mount, so that's what would originally hold these chips down in the earlier generations. So these work pretty well, but they have made some improvements here. Now it might not look very different here, but let me just tilt this up. What you can see there is essentially a different plastic cover that has allowed for solid soldered joints for the electrical connections. Now that not only helps improve electrical conductivity and reliability, but the chip itself has now got a lot more pressure holding against the heatsink. So that's a great thing for thermal management and heat transfer, which we absolutely love to see improvements like that. Now I just want to cover a couple more details in regards to these three types of panels. Now they certainly pack a punch for their size, but just to clarify what we're dealing with here, the Luma 400 consumes 110 watts from the wall. We rate this for a flowering coverage of about 60 centimeters by 60 centimeters. At least this is where we're finding they're performing really well. The Luma 800 here consumes 220 watts. That's perfect for your 80 centimeter by 80 centimeter. And finally, the Luma 1200 at 320 watts consumption is more suitable for your meter by meter coverage for flowering. Now we rate these on flowering coverages because that's where most people are going to be placing these panels and expecting performance. Don't get me wrong, if you're vegetating, you can get a fair bit more coverage, and hey, if you're working with leafy greens, you're going to get a lot more coverage than what we're rating them for here today. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please feel free to get in touch if you have any questions at all. Thanks for watching.